there. Welcome to the CMMC Compliance Guide Podcast. I'm Stacey.
And I'm Austin.
From Justice IT Consulting, where we help businesses like yours navigate CMMC and NIST 800-171 compliance. We're hired guns getting companies fast-tracked to compliance, but today we're here to give you all the secrets for free. So if you want to tackle it yourself, you're equipped to do so. Let's dive into today's episode and keep your business on track. Today's episode is all about CMMC Level 1. We're going to cover what it is, what the 15 required practices are, what documentation you need, and whether or not you have to be assessed by someone else. If you're a small shop handling federal contract information, FCI, and you've been told that you need to get CMMC ready, this is your starting line. Okay, Austin, let's start simple. Can you tell us what CMMC Level 1 is?
Yeah, so CMMC Level 1 is, from the government's perspective, I should say, the most basic cybersecurity hygiene or regiment that they want you to have in place to do business with them, basically. If you're familiar with CMMC Level 2, it's trying to protect what's called CUI, which is Controlled Unclassified Information. I like to describe it as kind of like the smaller puzzle piece of broader, bigger, more classified things. It's not always exactly true, but kind of conceptually gets the point across. CMMC Level 1 is protecting not CUI, but FCI, Federal Contract Information. And what that is, again, by no means a complete definition of what it is, but the way I like to think of it is information that's not publicly available that is related to that contract that you have with the government. A way to determine if it's publicly available and whether it's FCI or not is if it's not accessible on a public website that you don't have to log in for. Even if you can register for a login for free and then log into it, that doesn't count. Like unlogged in website that's just basically publicly advertised, that's not FCI. Everything else is more on the FCI sort of things. So basically, if you have a contract with the government that is in the defense space, but maybe even other stuff as well, then you could be handling FCI. You need to protect it with the minimum safeguards that they tell you they want you to keep your contract and keep doing business with them. So CMMC Level 1 has 15 core practices. They all come from the FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation 52.204-21 clause, which most of your contracts probably already include. Of course, we always caution that people go actually look at their contracts and see what's included to see if you even have to follow these rules. But chances are, if you're doing business with the government or someone that does business with the government, it's probably in there. So it's not some new invention, but with CMMC Level 1, it's just now that you have to prove that you're doing it. And starting in 2025, actually, I think just a couple days ago, November 10th, you need to do a self-assessment every year and upload your score into the SPRS, the SPRS system. Quick note on that, that if you actually go read the rules, it says in there, in the FAR, that you need to retain the evidence as well. So whenever you self-attest, you need to aggregate or put all the evidence that you had to say that you were Level 1 in a file or folder or otherwise keep it around. So that way if the government comes knocking, you can actually prove to them that you said that in good faith. And it says it's not something that you should do just out of best practice. It actually says you have to retain that for, I think it's 6 years. Don't take that to the bank. Go read it yourself. That's just coming off the top of the head, but I think it's something like that. So,
Austin, can you walk us through the 15 practices in plain English?
We'll go ahead and break them into the 6 categories that they are. Each category has multiple practices, one or multiple practices. And the first one is access control. And what it's made up of, and we're going to stay in broad strokes here today to kind of get the concept across so you can understand what CMMC Level 1 is and what generally you have to do. And so in access control, what you have to do is limit who can access systems with FCI. So a practical interpretation of that, I'll bring up QuickBooks again. I like to talk about it a lot because it's a good example of like a lot of customers use a tool like QuickBooks. It's very commonplace, right? So for example, CMMC Level 2, you're probably not going to be putting CUI in your QuickBooks, but what you are putting in there for sure is FCI, Federal Contract Information, things like invoices, part numbers, stuff like that, contract IDs or whatever. That is all going in QuickBooks. And so QuickBooks, for example, you have to limit who has access to those systems, what they can do with it, and you have to document it. And then, of course, anything else that has FCI, but that's a practical nugget you can take away as an example. So another piece of access control is making sure that the people that do have access to FCI only have access to what they need to do their job or fulfill the role that they are in the company. They don't need just broad sweeping access to everything unless they don't need it. Another is you need to block outsiders from remote access unless it's secure. So pretty simple thing there. But for example, if you use QuickBooks Online, then you would need to set up multi-factor authentication on your QuickBooks Online. And a lot of people don't have that set up. But for FCI, it's required. And anything else that has FCI on it. So your email, for sure, even if you don't have CUI, which if you're level 2, or you might be in the future, if you're trying to be a level 1, then and you're using Microsoft Commercial, then you need to have multi-factor authentication turned on your email because you most likely have FCI in your email. So this all needs to be documented and set up in a similar way that level 2 is, just with less stringent controls and a slightly less heavy burden of documentation. And then you need to keep public data separate from FCI. The next category is identification and authentication. The goal here is to know who has access to what, right? So a lot of companies tend to use shared logons, for example. So you may have 3 people that are in accounting that all use the accounting login for QuickBooks or this computer, or that computer, or this system or that system. And that's not okay for CMMC Level 1. So they need the best way to do it is to have named user accounts that is directly attributable to that person. But if you want to use accounting 1, accounting 2, accounting 3, and you want to map it to a specific person in your documentation and say Bobby Sue is accounting 1, then that could be sufficient. It's just not preferred. And if we like to very cleanly play by the rules, and so we don't typically suggest doing that, but it could be argued that it's perfectly fine as long as you do it correctly. So the goal is to have a unique login for everyone. So whenever they're doing something, you can see what they've done, and they only have access to certain things. So you don't have potentially multiple people in the same account that could do things, and we can't attribute it to one individual or the other. That's the main goal with identity and identification. And then authentication, we want to make sure that we're requiring passwords for everything, sufficient passwords, and logon methods that actually verify their identity. So, sorry to break it to you, but you can't have, I know there's a surprising number of companies out there that still like to have, and I'm sorry, I'm going to call you out, CEOs and owners, but it's typically y'all, and you want to have a user account that doesn't have a password to log in, and that's just not going to fly anymore because you have compliance, and compliance says you can't do that. The good times are gone. You can't do that anymore. So you have to implement that. The other is media protection. So media in terms of IT is not like, videos and popcorn and Netflix. Media is the thing that data is stored on, and it's called a medium. So, examples of that would be thumb drives, computers, stuff like that. Those are all mediums in which you can store data. Is kind of the how the term is being used. And so when you get rid of old computers or USB drives or thumb drives, you need to wipe them clean and destroy them. Your documentation needs to say how you're going to do it. You need to have the evidence that you did it and everything else. So that's the main thing with media protection is just they don't want you to have a USB drive or a computer that you have old federal contract information on or invoices or part numbers, and you sold it on eBay or gave it to your kid to go do college work on or something. You need to scrub that data, destroy it, or even if like your USB drive went bad and it's like, oh, well, it's fine, it doesn't work anymore, you can't get access to it. Not sufficient. You need to destroy it properly in an approved way that you can reasonably, say that the data is gone and can't be recovered, and then document it. So, before you give it your old computer to your kiddos, you gotta clean it up first. So physical protection is protecting the physical spaces in which your FCI information is stored. So easy way to think about this is you got a laptop or a computer or a server, and you have an office space. Those laptops and computers and servers are in the office space. And to protect that physical space and the computers inside of it, you need to lock your doors. When you have visitors, you need to escort them. You have to have a visitor log. These are the kind of things you have to do in CMMC Level 1. And then you need to store those logs, protect those logs. So that way you have integrity of the logs, so that way you can prove things later and show it to the government if they came knocking. Then you also need to, if you have a physical office, you don't have to go out and spend a bunch of money and get some big, $2,500 to $3,000 door access control fob system. That's certainly a way to achieve it. That was what we got quoted a couple years ago. I'm sure it's more expensive now. But you don't have to do that. That is a way to solve it. You can simply just serialize the keys. If you have physical keys, get you a Dremel. I'm kidding. There's actually serialized keys you can sell and have a locksmith make for you. That's probably an easier way to do it. If you have a digital code door, and it's got a set of digital codes, then you would just have like an inventory of who has what codes, and you would decommission those codes, change them when people came or left, and who they're attributable to. So those need to be able to be tied to a person as well. And then, construction trailers, same thing. Unfortunately, you guys are going to have to, serialize the keys or do a punch code and maintain an inventory of the construction trailer keys. I bring that one up because it's a common one that we see that is a bit of a burden for people. They have to do it, and if they're not doing it, then they're not compliant. So it's a little easier for maybe a aerospace manufacturer, machine shop. They're kind of used to doing the escorting of visitors and the log, and everyone has a fob to get in the doors, or a key code or a serialized key. Those would be the main areas that you're needing to protect physical access. And it probably doesn't need to be said, but your server room ideally would be done the same way as well. So if you have a dedicated space for your servers and whatnot, you need to do all the same things I said in the same way. So Another category is system and communications protection. The easiest way that I can think of off the top of my head to describe this one, an example is like a website. So if you host your own website at your office on your own servers or something, you need to segment your networks to where that website server is not on the same network as where your FCI information is. So the goal basically is to not mix and match public-facing systems with your private production systems where your FCI is stored. So you want to segment those systems where they can't communicate to each other. So if you have a public server, like a web server, website, or something like that, then you need to separate that and segment it appropriately. And the last category is system integrity. And the main things here are patching your software and your computers. You get updates for all your computers and all your software. A lot of times people just go click later, ignore. Well, for CMMC Level 1, you have to you have to do that stuff. And you have to have the policies for saying how you handle it and everything else. And the reason being is because if a lot of the updates for your software are not necessarily like features that you're getting from the software provider, they're actually patching security holes and exploits. So it's keeping hackers and security holes from being in your network. And so that's why they want to make sure that happens. The use of antivirus or endpoint detection or something like that. So needs to be done properly. You need to make sure I've got on all your computers and it's managed appropriately, and you're updating it with the latest definitions. So that way it's not working on a year-old expectation of what viruses are. It needs to be updated, much like your computers and your software is. And then you need to scan for threats regularly. So you can't just have antivirus on your systems and it be updated. You actually have to prove and show that you're scanning for threats on a regular basis, and that's all written in your policies as well. If you're using tools like Windows or Microsoft 365, which 90% something like of us are, many of these can be turned on with a mild to moderate amount of headache. You're probably going to need an IT guy or lady at the end of the day to implement these things, unless you're just really savvy. But the real key is making sure you have all the documentation that it is set up correctly and how you're going to set it up.
Well, I think you and I and our listeners can agree it's not a CMMC Compliance Guide podcast episode without the documentation topic coming up.
You're right.
So let's step into that a little bit further. What kind of documentation is needed for Level 1?
So the documentation...
Hey everyone, Stacey here, jumping in for a quick moment. Because before you head into the new year, there's one thing you cannot afford to leave unresolved: your SPRS score. If you're unsure how close you are to an SPRS 110 or what gaps might put your 2025 contracts at risk, we're offering something that will give you instant clarity. For the month of December, you can claim a free 90-minute SPRS roadmap session with our certified compliance team. Here's what you'll walk away with: a clear picture of your current SPRS position, the exact gaps that need attention, and a high-level roadmap showing the path to an SPRS 110. This is normally a $1,500 consulting value, but we're offering it completely free through December. No sales pitch, no pressure. Just straight guidance from an RP, RPO, and CCP. Spots are limited, and they'll fill quickly this time of year. If you want to start January with clarity and confidence, head to cmmccomplianceguide.com/free-SPRS-roadmap. Again, that's cmmccomplianceguide.com/free-SPRS-roadmap. All right, let's get back into the episode.
That is needed is policies, procedures, evidence. We like to write it in a similar way that your SSP and supporting policies for CMMC Level 2 is, but it very much can easily be just a long set of policies and procedures that say how you're satisfying all 6 of these categories, 15 of these 15 practices. That is completely sufficient. So policies is you're writing down your rules, what you're doing. For example, your password policy, what it is, and how you're doing it. Procedures is how you're applying those rules, how it's set up, your procedures for doing so. A good example of this is your patching. You have your patching policy. It's going to be X day of the week, and it's done this way. Is done X day of the week, and their procedure way would be it's done this way, implemented this way. This is how we do it. And then your evidence would be the screenshots, reports, logs, checklists, things like that. Any otherwise evidence that you've done it and it's been implemented. And you want to make sure, again, like I said at the beginning, that you actually have that evidence in some sort of repository. If it's a ticketing system, file, a folder, a SIM or whatever. I think it's, go look it up, but I think it's 6 years is what you have to retain it for at the date of attestation, I believe. So make sure you have your evidence. That's one that for CMMC Level 1 people just always miss. You have to have evidence, and because the rule says you have to have evidence. So you don't. If you want to risk it, that's on you. You do your thing. But if I'm attesting, I said I did something and the rule says I have to have the evidence and I have to retain it for 6 years, I don't want to get caught if the government comes knocking. My recommendation would be to store all that evidence and make sure you have it every time that you attest.
For CMMC Level 1, are they getting assessed or certified?
Yeah, so they are assessing themselves. So there's going to be no third-party assessor. You're not paying anyone to come in. I guess you could if you really wanted to, try and put your best foot forward, but as not required, and I don't see anyone doing it. To be clear, you do not need a third-party assessor, but you are going to do a self-assessment of your own company once a year and submit your score to the SPRS system, SPRS system. And again, as I've said several times, you have to make sure that you have the evidence for that self-attestment on file somewhere to support that claim for a period of, I think it's 6 years. So that is the other piece that people tend to leave out. You can do it yourself, certainly. It'd be good to hire a consultant that's very familiar with CMMC and the standards to make sure you're not missing something, because attesting is attesting that you are doing it. So even if you weren't right, not knowing that you weren't right is not okay. The government says, well, we don't really care if you didn't know what you're attesting to, you attested, and so you're still on the hook for it. So that's why we suggest hiring a professional to help you through your attestment and through your CMMC program. They don't have to do everything, but certainly at least a minimum level of guidance would be suggested. If you want to write your own contract that you have someone sign, that's cool, but have a lawyer look at it. It's like another common thing. Just you want to make sure you're not running astray of the rules or the laws, or getting yourself in trouble that you otherwise didn't know if you didn't hire someone that was more familiar with it. So that's what we suggest. Again, not required. It is a self-attestment. And even if the government doesn't come knocking, your prime or your customer might, and they might want to see evidence. I know As of late with the recent changes in November 10th, we've had a fair amount of primes come to our customers asking for evidence on certain items related to their CMMC Level 1 status. So it's not unprecedented to have your customer looking at more than just your attestment and your score, and actually looking for some verification of it. Now, we've not had them do a full audit. Haven't seen that yet, but they've definitely picked out some pieces they wanted to see hard evidence on.
So for viewers and listeners at home, what would you suggest they get started on today?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the podcast, you know that we say all roads lead to scope or scoping, or your data flow diagram. We honestly recommend a very similar situation for CMMC Level 1. And what scope and data flow ultimately boils down to, in its simplest term, is answering the question, where does FCI, federal contract information, live in my environment? And you would start with where you get it from a customer, how it travels through your network, who it touches, who touches it, what systems, programs, cloud apps, QuickBooks, whatever it resides or in or traverses. So figure that out. That's figuring out and answering the question where FCI lives in your environment. That's first. Second is review all the 15 controls that we talked about today, and make sure that you meet them. And I'll tell you what, in the description, what we can do is there's the government provided CMMC Level 1 guide. I think it's a self assessment guide or something like that. We'll drop that in so that way it's easy to find. Sometimes it's not always easy, especially when you're punching CMMC in Google these days. You get a lot of different stuff, and it's not always the government's. So we'll drop that in. And you can use that to look at all 15 practices or controls and make sure that you meet them. And then third is document your practices and then draft your documentation. So what are your policies? What are your procedures? How are you achieving these 15 requirements? Write all that in. And then once you do all that and you generate your evidence along with that, then you can fill out your SPRS score or do your self-attestment. There are some tools out there that can help you do this. It's a little easier to do CMMC Level 1 without them. But they're certainly out there. You can search for them. Probably the easiest place to start, instead of going and getting some fancy tool, unless you just want to, is that document that we'll drop in the comment or description or wherever we decide to put it.
If you have questions about what we covered today, reach out to us. We're here to help fast track your compliance journey. Text, email, or call in your questions and we'll answer them for free here on the podcast. You can find our contact info at CMMCComplianceGuide.com. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, stay compliant, stay secure, and make sure to subscribe.